My wife is just a greedy old hag. She's nothing but a gold-digging parasite. I wish I could just divorce her and be free.
My husband, Ryan, said this at a family gathering. He seemed to find it easy to vent to his younger cousin, Kenny, as his words flowed freely.
Ryan, that's going too far.
Oh, it's fine. While I'm busy working, she's just lazing around at home. Man, having a family is such a mistake.
I was completely taken aback by his words. He only brings home $1,200 a month after taxes, and yet I couldn't take it anymore. I opened the door with a loud bang and spoke firmly to Ryan, who looked stunned. Then let's get divorced. Be as free as you want.
What?
Ryan, Kenny, and the rest of his relatives stared at me, dumbfounded. Beyond them, our young daughter, Emily, just 3 years old, was also there, but my patience had reached its limit. How much suffering had Ryan caused me until now? And so, the battle between my husband and me began, abruptly and unexpectedly. My name is Natalie Carter, 32 years old. I live with my husband, Ryan, and our 3-year-old daughter, Emily. This ordinary family exists only because of my constant effort. And that's not just my imagination. Ryan and I met through our mutual friend. At the time, I had just started working at a major local bank, and Ryan was also employed at a big company as a young professional. We hit it off immediately. After a few years of dating, we married when I was 28 and Ryan was 32.
Let's have a good life together, Natalie.
Of course, let's build a happy family. That's how our married life began. Soon, I became pregnant, and we were filled with joy. But I never imagined that this would mark the beginning of my unhappiness. What? You quit your job. Why?
I couldn't help it. The guy who just became my boss is the absolute worst. I couldn't take it anymore.
You couldn't take it? It's only been about a month since his new boss took over. I was 5 months pregnant at that time.
Don't worry.
I felt uneasy, thinking this wasn't the best timing to quit, but Ryan smiled without a care.
Actually, I've already lined up my next job.
Really?
Yeah, it's with a company called Y-Tech.
I never heard of Y-Tech before. Seeing me tilt my head in confusion, he spoke proudly.
Do you remember Mike Sanders? My senior from high school? He even came to our wedding. He's the one who started this programming company as the CEO. And guess what? He invited me to join as one of the founding members. Isn't that awesome? Basically, it's headhunting.
Mike Sanders. That Mike. Mike Sanders was a senior at high school, 1 year older than Ryan. He even gave a speech as the best man at our wedding, showing how close he was to Ryan. They were in the soccer team together, but now they've remained good friends. Before we got married, I had met him a few times. He was always full of confidence and ambition, leaving a strong impression. I never imagined he would start his own company and reach out to Ryan. Ryan, who had been working as a programmer. He looked happy to have been chosen, but I couldn't help feeling uneasy. But doesn't that mean the company isn't stable yet? Are you sure you'll get paid on time?
You worry too much. Mike said everything will be fine. Besides, isn't it amazing that he recognized my programming skills and reached out to me? Honestly, my old company was awful, so I'm glad I consulted with Mike.
Ryan was already completely on board, and there was no stopping him. While I was shocked by his sudden career change, I thought it was better than him being unemployed, so I decided to accept it. More than anything, I wanted to support Ryan, who was brimming with excitement and looking forward to his new job. Ryan started his new position right away. 2 weeks later, Ryan came home late one night.
Hey, we've got a guest. The CEO is here, so get something ready quick.
Wait, you can't just spring this on me. Without any prior notice, Ryan brought Mike to our house, leaving me completely taken aback. It was 9 p.m. It had been a while since I last saw Mike, who, after a quick greeting, barged into our home like he owned the place.
Long time no see, Natalie. Ryan and I were drinking and got all fired up. Since we've got a lot to talk about regarding work, we thought we'd really hash things out tonight.
Oh, it's been a while. The two of them had clearly been drinking, their faces flushed red. I was completely turned off and wrinkled my nose at the smell of alcohol.
Hey, Natalie, bring out some good food for Mike. We're talking till morning.
Don't worry about me. Just throw together something simple. I know it's tough since you're pregnant.
If that's the case, he shouldn't have come in the first place. But I couldn't say that, so I quietly served them food. Ryan, making his pregnant wife work in the kitchen late at night, didn't seem to think he was doing anything wrong.
Hey, don't you have more snacks to go with this?
No, I don't. You should have given me a heads up. It's really inconvenient.
Sorry. It was a last-minute plan. But since it's for the future, don't mess it up.
In the end, the two of them partied until morning. The next morning, I was disheartened to see the living room littered with beer cans and leftovers, while the two of them snored loudly. Can a company run by someone like that really be okay? My worries were soon confirmed. Is this all your paycheck?
Well, it's just the beginning. Mike said it'll go up depending on performance, so it's fine.
Ryan's first paycheck from Y-Tech was a pittance. After deductions for taxes and insurance, he brought home only $1,000. It was an appalling amount for the head of a household with a wife and child to support. Your base salary is way too low. Didn't you check with Mike beforehand?
I did, but he said it could double or triple depending on how the company does. Plus, he promised me a management position in the future. Trust me, it'll be fine.
Ryan's blind faith in Mike was unsettling. Determined not to rely on his unstable income, I decided to take maternity leave while ensuring I could return to work quickly. I also started searching early for daycare options and made arrangements with my boss to return as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Ryan's salary never increased. There were no bonuses either. Yet Ryan would still invite Mike over occasionally to drink and feast. When Mike visited during my last month of pregnancy, I was so fed up, I left to stay at a hotel. Why should I be the one forced out of my own home? It was heartbreaking. Then the day of delivery arrived. I safely gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Seeing our child for the first time, I was overwhelmed with joy and couldn't wait for Ryan to meet her. When I called him, he was thrilled.
Natalie, great job. Our baby is finally here. I'm so happy.
Thank you, Ryan. Tears welled up in my eyes. But his next words left me speechless.
Mike's so excited too. He's planning a celebration for us right now. I'm heading out to join him, so just wait a bit, okay?
What? Did I hear that right? But in the background, I could hear the lively chatter of a group. Deep male voices were shouting things like, "Congratulations," and a toast to Ryan, the new dad. As the mood grew lively, it sounded like someone grabbed the phone, and suddenly I heard Mike's voice.
Hey there, Natalie. Congrats. We're just borrowing Ryan for a bit. I'll send him back with all the fatherhood skills he needs.
Knock it off, boss.
The carefree voices of the men grated on me. I gripped the phone tightly, trying not to crush it out of anger. Even though our child was just born, Ryan's first priority was a company drinking party. He had been out drinking plenty before the birth, too. I was shaking with rage at Ryan, who couldn't even come to see his child immediately. I ended up venting to my mom when she visited me at the hospital. This is just unbelievable.
That's terrible. At this rate, you won't even be able to rest after you're discharged. Why don't you come back my home for a bit? It's a little far, but we'll help out.
To be honest, that would be such a relief. I'm sorry, though you and Dad are still working. Grateful for her offer, I decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. Even though my parents were still working and I was alone with Emily during the day, just having them help with meals and daily chores was a huge relief. About 2 weeks later, I returned to our house where Ryan was waiting. Surprisingly, the house wasn't a complete mess, which was a bit of a relief. Looks like you've been keeping things in order.
Of course, I'm a dad now, you know.
I scanned our house, feeling uncertain about how reliable he actually was. That's when I noticed something in the corner of the room. What is this? Why is something like this here? I picked it up and quietly hid it before Ryan could see. And so, life with a baby began. As expected, Ryan wasn't much help. In fact, my mom, who visited just once a month, was far more reliable. Ryan often claimed he had overtime or drinking parties and stayed out late. Even when he was home, he didn't show much interest in spending time with Emily. It made me question whether a father like this was even necessary. His paycheck remained just as low. It only increased slightly, from $1,000 to $1,200 after taxes. I brought it up once, but he scolded me instead.
Are you some kind of gold digger? Stop complaining about my salary.
I returned to work as soon as possible. Thanks to the preparations I'd made, I managed to secure a daycare spot for Emily. Each day, I dropped her off early in the morning, picked her up after my shortened work hours, and worked from home after putting her to bed. Although I felt guilty leaving her in daycare at just 6 months old, I clung to my job for the sake of our future. As a result, I often spent weekends utterly exhausted, lying on the couch.
Hey, Emily's crying. Go comfort her.
Sorry, I really just need to lie down for a bit. Could you take care of her?
Are you kidding me? How can a mom just ignore her baby? I got home late last night too, you know. You're the one with shorter hours. What are you doing just lazing around all the time?
The only reason he was out late was because he'd been drinking, so he had no right to compare himself to me, struggling to put the baby to sleep. To be honest, by this time, I no longer had any affection left for Ryan. The resentment from everything he'd done before and after the birth of our child kept growing stronger. I seriously wanted a divorce. Still, going through with a divorce while juggling childcare felt daunting. It required both courage and energy. Lacking enough of either, I grew more and more exhausted each day. By the time Emily turned 3, we went to Ryan's parents' house one summer day for a summer holiday gathering. Since their place is deep in the countryside, we only visit during Christmas and summer holidays. A lot of relatives always gather there. Though Ryan is an only child, he has many cousins. That day, several of his cousins from the area brought their kids along.
So, Ryan's a dad now? I can't believe it.
Hey, that's rude. I'm doing a great job, you know.
Ryan boasted to Kenny, his younger, still single cousin. It was during moments like these that Ryan liked to act like a super dad. He tried to sit Emily on his lap, but she turned away, probably because he hardly ever paid attention to her. Instead, she joined a group of other kids. I thought, it serves him right, and got up from my seat to help the others in the kitchen. As I was about to open the door to serve tea, I heard voices talking about me and stopped.
But Natalie is so beautiful. I wish I had a wife like her.
Kenny was complimenting me. I felt happy for a brief moment, but then Ryan's arrogant voice cut through.
What are you talking about? My wife is just a greedy old hag. She's nothing but a gold-digging parasite. I wish I could just divorce her and be free.
My whole body froze.
Hey, Ryan, that's too much.
Oh, it's fine. While I'm busy working, she's just lazing around at home. Man, having a family is such a mistake.
Ryan burst out laughing. In that instant, all the hardships I'd endured came rushing back to me. Being forced to cook in the middle of the night while pregnant. The fact that he was drinking with his buddies, not even rushing to the hospital right after I gave birth. His lack of support with childcare afterward. Something snapped inside me. I opened the door with a loud bang and spoke firmly to Ryan, who looked stunned. Then let's get divorced. Be as free as you want.
What?
My words were driven by anger, but they were simply the culmination of all the resentment I had bottled up. I didn't want to endure it any longer. I pointed sharply at Ryan and let out all the frustration I had been holding in. A gold-digging parasite. How dare you say that? I work too, and you dump all the housework and childcare on me. Who's the real parasite here?
Housework and childcare are a mother's job. That's just how it is.
That kind of attitude is exactly what I can't stand. I heard quick footsteps behind me as someone rushed over.
Natalie, please calm down.
It was Ryan's mom, Betty, trying to pacify me. She probably thought this was just another marital spat, but it wasn't. This was a divorce issue. No, I need to say this today. First, you called me a greedy old hag, didn't you? Well, if you lived with a husband who only brings home $1,200 a month, you'd get greedy too. Struggling with money changes you as a person. Did you know that? As soon as I said that, the expressions of his relatives around us changed.
$1,200.
Did you say $1,200?
Seriously? $1,200?
Hearing them repeat it like a chant, Ryan's face turned pale.
Hey, who talks about the actual amount of money like that?
Well, maybe people who live with someone who thinks $1,200 is enough to feel like they're supporting a family. If I weren't working, our savings would have been gone long ago. And yet, you still think you're the breadwinner?
Oh,
Ryan gritted his teeth as his stunned parents hastily interjected.
$1,200. Ryan, is that true?
Wait, you said you joined your senior's company. Is that still all you're making?
Ryan's parents kept repeating the amount like it was a refrain. Ryan panicked.
no, it's not like that. Mike said the salary will go up over time. He's a great guy, really. He even takes me out drinking a lot.
He was saying the same things he'd been saying 3 years ago. The salary that was supposed to go up never did, and it was still $1,200. Yet Ryan kept blindly believing in Mike.
Out drinking. So it's true that you haven't been helping with childcare.
Well, no, I mean,
Ryan seemed to realize he had just dug his own grave.
So the reason Natalie stayed at her parents' house after the birth was partly because of this. I'm sorry, Natalie. We thought you two were managing fine, so we stayed out of it.
No, Betty and Robert aren't at fault. It seemed like Ryan's parents were on my side. Seizing the moment, I shared the truth I had been holding back. Even on the day I gave birth, he went out drinking with his coworkers. Over these 3 years, I've realized exactly what kind of person Ryan is.
The day of the birth? That's unbelievable.
Even Kenny, who was single, looked appalled. But Ryan still didn't seem to think he'd done anything wrong.
I didn't have a choice. It's part of networking at my work. If I don't, my career could be ruined, and then we'd be in serious trouble.
He was spouting excuses that held no weight. To be honest, if anyone ends up on the street, it'll be Ryan, not me. I've been working steadily as a full-time employee, so it won't affect me much. Even in front of his parents, Ryan showed no signs of remorse. I knew for sure that I couldn't see a future with this man anymore. I picked up the handbag that had been sitting in the corner and pulled out a piece of paper, holding it out in front of Ryan. I'm done listening to excuses. Fill this out.
A divorce agreement.
It was a completed divorce agreement. I had been carrying it around as a sort of talisman, ready to cut ties when the time came.
Natalie, calm down. Let's talk about it calmly first.
Even Ryan's father, Robert, tried to step in and stop me at this point. Betty quickly ushered the children into another room, and the other relatives also left the scene. Seeing Emily glance back at me with a confused look as she left stung a little, but I had to stand firm. The only ones left were Ryan, his parents, a few relatives, and me. I faced them, resolute. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Today just happened to be the day I decided to act. And besides, I opened my mouth. I prepared to share what I had been holding on to as a last resort. I might as well lay it all out now. Ryan has been cheating on me. That's why it's impossible for us to continue as a couple.
Cheating?
Cheating?
Robert was stunned, and Betty nearly fainted. Ryan turned pale.
What are you talking about?
Don't bother denying it. I've already gathered the evidence. I began to explain. There was a time after Emily's birth when I stayed at my parents' house. When I returned home after some time, I found our house unusually clean, but there was a long strand of hair on the floor. It was about 12 inches long, bright brown, and completely unfamiliar. Isn't that strange? Neither of us has hair that long.
Oh, that must have been from one of my coworkers. They came over because they heard I was alone and thought I might be lonely. They even said it's heartless for you to keep running back to your parents' place instead of building a proper home.
Ryan's attempt to fight back only made him look worse. They all said, "It sounds like a child." Well, maybe your coworkers really are that close. But don't you think this is a little too close?
What?
I unlocked my phone and showed him the screen. There was a photo of Ryan alongside a woman with long hair entering a hotel.
What is this?
Robert's face turned red with fury as he glared at his son. Ryan flinched, shrinking back in fear. "I suspected you were cheating, so I hired a private investigator. These are the results of their investigation. The documents are at home, but I've transferred all the data to my phone. So, Ryan, are you still going to deny it?"
No. This isn't. It's not.
"I've already looked into your mistress. It's Kate, your coworker. She doesn't have kids, but she's married. I also found out that you two often work late nights together. Or should I say, you pretended to be working." Ryan turned pale and couldn't come up with a coherent response. Betty, with tears welling in her eyes, gave him a sharp glare.
Ryan, this is just disgraceful. You have Emily, and yet you behave like this? And with a salary as pitiful as yours, how could you treat Natalie like this?
Seeing Betty cry seemed to sting Ryan's conscience, and he hung his head. But it was far too late for that. I sighed deeply and said, "My decision is final. Sign it now."
No way. We can still fix this, right? Emily needs her dad.
"Don't worry about Emily. Even now, you come home drunk after she's asleep, sleep in until the afternoon on weekends, and never spend time with her. If it were because of work, I could understand, but with what I've discovered, there's no excuse." Kenny looked completely exasperated as he muttered.
How is that being a good father?
Ryan's mask was completely off now.
No, I don't want this.
He cried out. With such a commotion, we couldn't stay at Ryan's parents' house any longer and left quickly. During a follow-up discussion at home, Ryan continued to resist the idea of divorce. But when I invited my parents over and the three of us confronted him, he reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Getting a divorce was an exhausting ordeal. But once I gained momentum, the process went surprisingly smoothly. As much as I couldn't forgive what Ryan had said at his parents' house, it ironically pushed things forward to finalize my divorce. The division of assets worked in my favor. The mortgage for the house was initially a joint loan, but I transferred it entirely into my name and had Ryan move out. As a banker, my income and creditworthiness made me more than capable of handling the payments. With a take-home pay of $1,200, Ryan had no chance of keeping the house. Savings from before our marriage weren't subject to division. And since I had been pregnant shortly after getting married, splitting my earnings from that short period didn't hurt much. I also made sure to get alimony from both Ryan and his mistress, Kate. When it came to finances, as a banker, I left no room for error. The scandal even led to Kate's divorce and resignation from her job. Ryan, meanwhile, still works at Tech. He probably is working hard to earn a small salary and pay child support under Mike. Ryan's parents, who informed me of his situation, apologized profusely and promised to ensure he continues paying child support. And so, I was finally free from Ryan. It felt incredibly liberating. The only thing that weighed on me was Emily. For all his faults, Ryan was still her father, and now she had lost one parent. I couldn't tell her the full truth yet, so I said only this: "Your dad and I won't be living together anymore." "I'm sorry, sweetie." Young and unaware of the situation, Emily responded cheerfully.
Oh, I see. Got it.
I knew that someday I would have to tell her the truth, but for now, my life as a single mother, balancing work and childcare, passed by in a blur. And before I knew it, 13 years had gone by. I was now 45 years old. Work was going well, and I had been promoted. Emily, now 16, had grown into a fine young woman. Life had become easier, with fewer struggles and more stability. Then, out of nowhere, a figure from my past reappeared. That day, I was working at my desk in the back office. A male coworker approached me and called out.
Excuse me, can I have a moment?
He worked at the customer service desk and seemed to be struggling with a situation he couldn't handle on his own. It was rare to see such a capable coworker looking so troubled. He explained that a difficult customer had been moved to a separate room, so I accompanied him there. When I entered, I was shocked. The person sitting there was none other than Mike, the CEO of the company where Ryan had worked.
Well, if it isn't Natalie.
"Mike, it's been a long time. What brings you here today?" I tried to remain composed, but inside, memories of the past came flooding back, leaving a bad taste in my mouth. Mike, now heavier and more wrinkled than before, let out a boisterous laugh that seemed even cruder than I remembered.
I came to request a loan for my company's new project, but this young guy here wasn't up to the task. He didn't even know how to read a business plan and just kept giving me attitude. So I told him to call his boss. But what are you doing here?
"I'm his boss."
What? You?
Mike looked surprised. I handed him my business card, and he stared at it, fixating on my title.
Loan manager?
"Yes, I'm responsible for all loan-related matters here. Since it seems our desk staff couldn't assist you adequately, I'll handle your case personally."
Oh, I see. Well, that's a relief. To be honest, I'd much rather deal with you. By the way, Ryan is still working at my company, you know? He's been working hard to pay child support.
Hearing Ryan's name made my brow twitch for a moment. "I see," I replied curtly, motioning for my coworker to leave the room. Once he left, I sat down on the sofa, facing Mike. I reviewed the business plan and financial projections he had brought. To be honest, they were overly optimistic and poorly thought out. With a sigh, I addressed him. "To put it bluntly, we cannot approve this loan based on the information provided."
What?
Mike's face twisted in anger as he glared at me, clearly upset at having his request denied. "But we're not running a charity here. We take a hard look at every case." The sales targets and profit projections are unrealistic, and the basis for them is far too weak. Does White Tech, at its current scale, really have access to such a large customer base? First of all, White Tech already received a startup loan from another bank. Why are you coming to us for this new project?
Well, that's because.
Did you perhaps do something to lose their trust, making it hard for you to approach them again? I said it on a hunch, but I hit the mark.
Well,
Mike's face twisted as if he'd bitten into something sour, and he lowered his gaze. I knew all too well the kind of man Mike was. 16 years ago, he used to barge into our home uninvited and drink the night away. He was excessively self-confident and overly ambitious. And he always looked down on others, believing the world revolved around him. However, this man doesn't realize something. Financial credibility is shared to some extent among banks. I had already learned about the questionable financial practices of White Tech from the bank that originally lent them money.
come on. Don't be so cold. Can't you give us a loan as an old friend? I mean, running into you here today has to mean something, right? Think of it as doing Ryan a favor.
And why exactly should I do a favor for my ex-husband? His overly familiar tone irritated me. I responded curtly, but Mike didn't take the hint.
Don't be so distant, Natalie. Remember how the three of us used to hang out and drink at your place back in the day?
Your memory seems quite selective. I was pregnant and stuck in the kitchen the entire time, doing all the work. The audacity was astonishing. It brought back all my old anger. I glared at Mike and let out years of pent-up resentment. Do you really think I'd approve a loan to a company that kept my husband out drinking instead of letting him come home to his family when I was raising a newborn? Also, one of the places my husband cheated was your company. I know this because I hired a private investigator at the time. Your company was used as a hotel, with the full cooperation of its CEO.
What? No, that's not true.
Mike stammered, completely flustered. He finally realized that this wasn't just about the loan anymore, but it was far too late. I decided to unload all my frustrations. Honestly, I don't even want to see your face again. You gave my husband a measly $1,200 after taxes, knowing full well he had a wife and child to support. You kept him working late. And on top of that, you enabled his affair. What a stellar company you run, a business that can't pay proper wages and lacks a shred of decency doesn't deserve to exist. It should just go under. Mike's face turned pale.
Please, no. I'm desperate. This is my last hope. All the other banks have turned me down. I'm begging you.
He begged me, but this wasn't just about my personal feelings. With such a shoddy plan and a ruined reputation, White Tech was unworthy of any loan. Even my branch manager, who had the final say, would never approve it. I calmly explained this to Mike, and he finally gave up. Perhaps my earlier tirade convinced him there was no point in continuing. As I escorted him to the door, silently willing him to never come back, the coworker who had called me earlier approached.
Thank you so much, manager. That guy kept saying completely unreasonable things, and I didn't know how to handle it.
You must have had a tough time. I returned to my desk and got back to work. But 30 minutes later, I received a phone call. I was surprised to hear Ryan's voice. It had been 13 years since I last spoke to him.
So you've insulted my boss. He begged you, and yet you refused the loan. What kind of heartless banker are you?
Is that really how you choose to address your ex-wife after all these years? It seemed that Ryan hadn't changed much. Mike lowering his head only lowered my mood. Don't call here again.
You're just as arrogant as ever. Fine, we'll get the loan elsewhere and expand our business.
Mike had already mentioned that they'd been rejected everywhere else. Clearly, Ryan wasn't paying attention to the important details. Sure, best of luck to you. Ignoring Ryan's continued ranting, I hung up and instructed my team not to take any more calls from Tech. Judging by their current state, the company seemed destined to implode. And I was right. Shortly after, I saw a small article in an industry newspaper announcing Tech's closure. The company had struggled since its inception, and their attempt to salvage things with a new project had failed. Now, they were busy dealing with debt restructuring. Reading the article, I wasn't surprised at all. The moment I saw their documents, I knew this would happen. After 16 years of mediocrity, Tech quietly met its end. But shortly afterward, Ryan showed up at my door. Having lost his job, and with nowhere to turn, he came looking to rely on us.
Please, let's live together again.
What makes you think we could possibly live together now? Go home.
Mike disappeared, my salary wasn't paid. That guy was a total crook. You worked me to the bone for peanuts, and then skipped town.
It was nothing but karma. He had disregarded his family for Mike, and now he was paying the price. While I was arguing with Ryan at the door, Emily appeared from the back of the house. Now a high schooler, Emily looked startled at the sight of the father she barely remembered.
Are you my dad?
Emily, you've grown so much. It's me, your dad. It's been a while, but let's live together again.
Ryan reached through the door, extending his hand. But Emily quickly stepped back, avoiding his touch.
You cheated on my mom, didn't you? And you've never once tried to meet me all these years. Now that you're unemployed, you're just trying to rely on us.
Emily?
I had explained the reason for our divorce to Emily when she became a teenager. I decided to tell Emily when she asked, feeling the timing was right. Being somewhat of a clean freak, she made a disgusted face as soon as she heard the truth.
Honestly, I can't think of him as anything but a stranger. Cheating is so disgusting. I could never live with someone like that.
What?
Emily firmly rejected Ryan. Seeing her resolute stance, Ryan slumped to the ground, unable to say anything more. He showed a sad, defeated figure as he slowly walked away. Later, I heard from Ryan's parents that he had returned to their rural home. Unable to pay his rent, Ryan had begged them to let him stay. Despite everything, his parents couldn't turn their son away and allowed him to move in. However, the fact that their only son had been divorced for infidelity had already spread not just among relatives, but throughout their small town, making it an uncomfortable place for him to live. Ryan's parents eventually decided to hand over their family home to him and move into a retirement community themselves. Now Ryan lives alone in that large house, estranged even from his relatives. Working as a temp just to make ends meet, his future doesn't look bright. On the other hand, I had always felt guilty about taking the presence of a father away from Emily. But after seeing Ryan's pitiful state the other day, I was certain I had made the right decision. I also realized I hadn't failed in raising Emily. You've grown so strong, Emily.
Well, I am your daughter, Mom.
Emily had grown into a resilient, capable young woman. Though life as a single mother must have been challenging for her, she always reassured me with her bright, untroubled smile. Now, Emily is busy preparing for college entrance. Before she gets caught up in the serious phase of her studies, she's making time to visit her grandparents, both my parents and her paternal grandparents at their retirement home. She's such a kind-hearted girl. Although Ryan caused me so much pain, I'm deeply grateful to have Emily. As for me, my career is going well. I've even been shortlisted as a candidate for branch manager, so work keeps me busy. I don't have the luxury of dwelling on the past or standing still. I'll keep moving forward, aiming for a brighter future. While watching over my precious Emily,